countless examples from my own era. Somebody like Macaulay Culkin comes to mind immediately. The adorable, wonderful boy who was in the Home Alone series, Closer Home. Of course, there was the absolutely adorable and soul-shattering Jugal Hansraj in the original Masoom. Um, and where I'm going with this simply is that there has been a slew of individuals, the Rasna girl, for example, uh, who come make a huge impact, occupy time, space in our collective consciousness, and then sort of vanish like Houdini just as suddenly as they seem to have come in the first place. A lot of them just pale into oblivion and anonymity. Some of them succumb to the various pressures that accompany fame at a certain, maybe early, young age, or even at a stage where one isn't sort of, doesn't have the mental faculties to really navigate all that comes with it. Um, and things can quickly go south. And it's very important, I feel, to investigate this particular area because there are enough and more examples as well of individuals who have had that brush with fame fairly early on and then have gone on to build very, very content, whole, complete lives for themselves. They may not necessarily be as much in the public domain, which is why you and I don't necessarily hear of them. But nonetheless, there is lots to learn from these people because they've cracked it in terms of, having that fame and fortune. Watching it sort of slip away, or consciously or unconsciously, and despite that, going on to build very, very quote unquote normal, regular, yet contented lives. And the individual joining us this evening is perhaps a perfect embodiment of this. We are calling the session Life Ain't a Fairway, because it isn't, but it's also a pun on, of course, the game of golf, because Nitika Kumari Jadeja, who is, comes from a long and illustrious line of pan India sports persons, has also been a pro golfer herself. Gained much notoriety very early on in life, and today is an extremely sought after golf coach with her own academy, Golfraj in Jaipur, which really, to the best of my knowledge, is the only one of its kind, and is also a psychologist. And from her, we hope to gain insights into some of these trappings that come with fame and how she dealt with that period and onwards. So I can't thank her enough. It's not easy to talk about these things, but I think therein lies a lot of insight and wisdom that we can use to sort of learn from and safeguard ourselves from certain tricky situations in life. So, Nitika, a very, very big thank you and a warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Firstly, what an introduction. Wow. You should be my hype person. But, but thank you so much. Very gracious of you. And, I'm going to jump straight into it. When you spoke about fame coming in early, wow, Karthik, it made me into a person with very, very strong, hard belief system. And of course, it's got its great points. You're playing a sport, you need a mindset, you have to have a strong mind bent towards pressures and stresses. also makes you very rigid, very stubborn. You have a difficulty in navigating through change. Um, yes, pressure's always there, and you kind of get used to that, but the change part, sometimes good, sometimes bad, is a little tricky to kind of go through. Um, I had to reprogram myself after I left golf. I had to reprogram my entire thinking process uh, to now be on the other side and be a golf instructor and coaching people. I understand the game as a sports as a player, but yeah, now I'm on the other side, so a lot of reprogramming, and that's been my massive learning curve. Yeah, when we think of fame coming in early, we also think about the financial aspect in life. And I mean, I come from a family which is, yes, as you rightly said, sports oriented. My grandfathers played for India, cricket, and my father was into cricket. But um, we were never taught about, we were taught about the value of money. We weren't taught about how to navigate and how to understand money. And I'm talking about an age which is from, let's say, uh, 13 to 18. And as a teenager, when you're making your own money, and you don't have that guidance because it's not a family culture. I respect the houses, and there are certain communities in India which teach children these things early. You
Sure.
don't have to be a sports person for that. You can be in any field, but that teaching is so important. And so many times I have parents coming in to me right now, and we're discussing all these things. And I'm like, yes, you're buying your child a golf set, which is costing you 50,000 rupees, I'd say, to start off. How has he earned it? You know, there's these small examples, and that's how I'm so glad, because with me my students have been there for years. And I think it's because we have a connection not just with golf, but it's all different aspects. And these learnings have only come to me because I achieved what I achieved early on.
Okay, I'm going to quickly jump in here, only in the interest of navigating our conversation
Right.
with a little bit of structure. You've said lots of very, very critical things, and I want to sort of lasso this conversation a little bit. Uh, there are two thoughts that are coming to my mind that I
Okay.
want your specific inputs on. Number one, and as we had discussed offline as well,
Yeah.
the entire advent of the support infrastructure that surrounds a particular athlete, irrespective of sport, is a fairly recent phenomenon in the Indian context, particularly in certain sports. Because, let's face it, we've been all completely about cricket, cricket, cricket.
Yes.
And so, golf would be a bit of a stretch. And so, things like physios and
Yes.
psychologists and sports therapists and the like is a very recent development. Of course, their inputs and their guidance and their support is unquantifiable and invaluable. It helps and assists hugely a young stroke new a person on the scene sort of navigate those murky waters. So, one is that presumably without any of that infrastructure at your pro time, how did you ultimately navigate, and what were some perhaps missteps that you made from which you've learned specific lessons? And I'm going to bung in another aspect of this same question right now. I'm happy to remind you later. Um, you know, even if there's an athlete who is pursuing that particular sport competitively purely out of his or her own will and passion, there is bound to be, because we're all human at the end of the day, there is bound to be some impact of the huge quote unquote normal life that you are entirely sacrificing in lieu of the level that you're trying to attain. And obviously we don't live under a rock, and we're all watching our contemporaries, our classmates,
Yeah.
doing all the fun normal things of
Oh,
life.
100%.
um, how do you think that sort of impacts? Can it frustrate an athlete, even unconsciously? So yeah.
Okay, so I'll take up the first part of the question. A support team that I see today, like I was watching the US Open, and they have a psychologist on site. There is a support system which is available today. Also, when I was playing for India, I was in 10th grade. There was no social media. It's got its blessings and side effects, both, rightfully. But what motivated me without all of this was just the passion for golf, just the
Hmm.
fact that I enjoyed
Hmm.
what I did. I didn't have my parents standing with a stick. Ki number one hi aana hai. I did not have, yes, there were times when I played badly and it was critically analyzed, which I think I needed.
Of course,
But,
and that's an
but
academic
yeah,
exercise.
yeah. But that came from my father, who would be traveling with me for the initial 2 years. And I think when I turned 16, I was all by myself. I was left by myself to travel and play. But till 16, when he was traveling, he kind of made a routine, kind of made a pattern. He made it easier for me to understand that there is always going to be a family support. But yes, when you need a physio, when you need a sports psychologist, when you need something like gym training, we used to do it in our off season. Okay, we couldn't do it while we were traveling on tour. And I think the kids today, amateurs, pro golfers, even other sports for that matter, they've got a privilege of having this constantly. Switch on a Zoom call and they're right there.
So to put it crudely, Nitika, what that essentially means is अभी कुछ distress हो रहा है, उसको डायरी में लिख के क्वेश्चन लिख लो, अब 6 महीने बाद देखेंगे.
Yeah, ऐसे ही था. It was exactly like this. And that is why I said the first thing I said was it instilled such a strong self-belief, because yeah, you just had to be there. Yeah, so at that point it was there.
So, we see all the time. I sometimes feel, of course, I'm probably overreading,
Hmm.
but so many of these greats, I tend to follow tennis, so the examples might come from there. But you see this tremendous release
Sacrifice.
when, Federer is almost non-emotive, but when Joko or somebody
Yes.
wins a big title, there is tears, and there is this very visceral physical reaction, which to me almost seems like, all of the sacrifice and the single-minded armed forces sort of, commando dedication has come to bear. And then there's this finally this release where you allow yourself to put it out there, what you've been perhaps not bringing to the fore in
Yeah.
order to remain razor sharp and focused,
Yeah.
etc.
So, to that, I feel, um, ask any sports person ever, we do not see a sacrifice as a sacrifice. It comes so intrinsically to us. I did not care how many birthdays I missed. I did not care that I had to sleep at 8 and wake up at 5, and that discipline. I did not care if friends wanted to come home, but I was training, because for me it was about the joy of being on the golf course versus I mean, I'm gonna put it in a crude manner, but wasting time when I can put in my energy at a place where I'm achieving certain goals. So to me, it never came as a sacrifice. It was a, I mean, a sacrifice by choice. I can say it was happily done, you know. So and I would also say that for somebody like Shagun Chaudhary, who was in my school, who's
Mm.
a senior of mine, very good friend of mine.
Yeah.
She It came so naturally to us that we were just happy achieving these goals. Yes, we loved our friends, and we were, when we were in school, it was, we were present in that moment. That is what taught us how to deal with a lot of relationships. We are present with situations. And yeah, I mean, I love that.
That's a great answer because on both fronts, the fact that the sacrifice really doesn't feel like sacrifice because it's coming from such a real, true, genuine place. And being present in the moment is, of course, something that we can all use. I always quote this very, very beautiful advertisement of Raymond. And there's
Mhm.
this young father who's
Yeah.
attending a stage performance at his child's school,
Yes.
and he's the only one who notices that the performance is over and starts clapping because every other parent in the audience is on their phone recording.
Oh, wow.
And he's the only one who's not recording because he's been in the moment throughout. So, yeah.
Yes.
Um, well, talk a little bit then. If you will. Oh, okay. I had another question, which I tend to ask a lot of women who've
Okay.
been in certain roles and accomplished, reach certain stages in their lives. Did you, on account of your gender, ever feel um, any differently treated or different being in such a competitive sport?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so glad you asked that. I'm so glad. Not even 1%. I have grown up, and there was no other woman golfer when I started golf. There was nobody on the golf course who was a woman where I could walk up to and say, "What clothes am I supposed to wear?" Where I, the questions like that I had in my mind. I was surrounded by men of a generation where they were so encouraging. Sportsman spirit was what I've learned from them, was that competition is real. Doesn't matter your gender. When we would compete against each other, it was equal. There was no like, oh, I've lost to a girl. I've never it's today, in today's world, when I go to the golf course, sometimes I will hear these dialogues that, oh, don't lose to a girl. Ladki se mat haar jana. At that time when I started golf, none of this was there. It also gave me a sense that I could compete with a gentleman who was 45 years old while I was 14 years old, with the same, at the same level. So
That's a remarkable response. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm chuffed at it, but I'm I'm just a little bit in disbelief because perhaps unlike yourself, I don't have to be politically correct. And I often find that in Rajasthan, especially, being
oh,
in many
it
ways
was,
still the cradle of patriarchy, that you didn't receive anything.
Yeah.
Sexism manifests in so many ways. It's you, of course, spoke very correctly about things like what to wear, etc. But
Yeah.
even more broadly, one would it wouldn't be entirely absurd to hear things like, "Oh, this is just is a little indulgence that a girl is doing."
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I never had those dialogues come to me. And also, I'm talking about an era of men which were different. What I have faced today, with masculine energy being flown towards me in my work life, when I'm coaching on the golf course, they're poles apart. So yeah, I had nothing sexist or nothing about a gender discriminating sort of a attitude that came out from men at that point. I mean, I
wow,
guess
remarkable.
lucky.
Let's go to then, you sort of moving out of the pro circuit.
Yeah.
Now, of course, there are various reasons why people choose to make that, very, very ostensibly tough decision. But keeping those aside, when you did decide and it was, now what next? What was your headspace like?
Oh, wow. So I made a very clear decision when I was in 10th grade that I'm going to become a sports psychologist. Now, to get to that, I was like, I need to get out of Jaipur, get to a good college. I was in LSR, and I, for me, it was, I think the most intimate relationship one can have is that of self-reflection.
Of course.
And to study the mind was not, it came out of a very curious, childlike place. But the more I learned about it, the more attracted I got towards that field. And yeah, and things worked out. But I did not practice both psychology except maybe when I was in university in Brighton, where I was working with cricketers in Sussex, the county team.
Sure.
That was it. That was my only sports psychology bit. What I did two masters. So one was with health and nutrition counseling, and I came back to India, and then I started off working with HIV positive kids. That to me was my calling with psychology.
Hmm.
So yeah, that was.
So explain that a little bit. Why do you say that was your calling?
Because, okay, a lot of people give me a lot of flack about this. When I had a big difficulty with the language of Hindi,
Hmm.
and it was so bad that I couldn't even have a proper conversation with people, and I felt bad about it, felt very insecure about
Sure.
it. One of my biggest reasons of joining this NGO, Faith, Sansthan, is was that I would be dealing with villagers and truckers, and my language barrier is what I broke.
Mm.
I'm lucky that I'm a very self-aware human being, and I go above and beyond to correct or to fight things that are difficult for me because I wouldn't want that. So yeah, so I worked with them, and I think uh, yeah, working with them was counseling in a fashion where it wasn't just telling somebody that, hey, you've got AIDS, you're HIV positive, but also telling the family, oh my God, there's a difference between AIDS and cancer.
Sure.
Like, do you even know what this is?
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that was the calling at that point.
So, how does life progress from that point? Because you sort of you had you let's say you evolved and took certain steps, both professionally as well as personally, if you'd like to share a little bit on both those counts, perhaps what were some factors that compelled you to take those steps and learnings therefrom?
Wow. Then came the dark phase. Then came, then came the phase that made me grow up into from a little girl to a woman, and still learning. But that phase was dark and lonely till the day my father literally. So I got married after that, and got married into a political family in Madhya Pradesh. It was, when you're in a situation, you do not realize the toxicity you're in,
Yeah,
because
you tend to lose
human beings,
perspective.
yeah, as human beings, we are so quick to adapt, to to kind of say that, okay, what we are thinking and what this other person is thinking, two separate perspectives, but we will get a solution.
Mm-hmm.
We're molded like that. And yeah, that led to me having a divorce, um with later on, my father literally walked into the room, pulled out my duvet, and said that, you're educated, earn your own bread and butter, and stop crying, get out of the bed. And I was like, okay. But that phase also made me realize something very, very deep. I got diagnosed with, clinically got diagnosed with anxiety disorder. I live with it till date. This was 2015 I got married. 2017 is when I got diagnosed. And I live with it every day. It's a disorder which is so misunderstood today, which is so commonly used in every passing sentence. I would never say I have anxiety. Like,
Sure.
I'm blessed to have a therapist where I have come to this understanding where I will never say now that I'm having anxiety. No, I will say something like, I am anxious about this, you know. And yeah, but
But of course,
a
that kind of grammar and vocabulary comes from a certain amount of
lot of
understanding.
lot of
Even
healing.
without that understanding, of course, the sad part is that a lot of very, very serious, particularly when it comes to mental health, it seems a lot of terminology has become
Yeah.
common parlance and has really been diluted and casualized,
Yes.
from, oh, वो सेल खत्म हो गया तो वो तो डिप्रेशन में चली गई, and
Uh,
all that kind of stuff that one gets to routinely hear.
So something as, I don't even know how to put this, but we were all sitting down for dinner at one point, and a family member said, "अरे, ट्रॉमा क्या होता है? एंजाइटी तो ट्रॉमा से कैसे होता है? बिकॉज वो तो सिर्फ जो लोग वॉर में जाते हैं उनके होता है." Something as simple as that. And I would have not, I mean, at that point I was so triggered. Okay, I was like, what, he doesn't understand what I'm going to. It's come to my understanding now, everybody will not understand
Yeah.
it, which is fair enough, and which is why we're also having this conversation today. But it's a blessing to have a therapist in your life, not because you have to have a disorder or a mental illness, but also in day-to-day life working, it just makes it a lot more peaceful. And yeah, so I mean, I've fallen in love with mundane routine. That's one way of navigating my anxiety.
Sure, sure.
I've understood that peace comes from within, that's come from my successes, from my failures, and it's been a very satisfying journey. And I've reached that point of healing and still ongoing, but I've reached that point only because I had a support of another person as my therapist.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And as you very critically pointed out, it really, really ought not to be, an intervention one seeks for a
Yeah.
particular condition, but just to gain a little bit of deeper understanding of the self and a perspective. It's so important. I think
I mean, it's the
everyone
first
should
time,
get therapy.
yeah, sorry. It's the first time I've actually opened up about my anxiety on a public platform. It's liberating. It's so liberating. I don't know if somebody is going to get affected by this or inspired or whatever, but as a person, it's just liberating to even talk about something like that. So, yeah, thank you, Karthik.
Not at all. Thank you for being so sort of, forthright and naked and vulnerable. It's very empowering, and I mean, liberating is the right term. Absolutely. Chalo, then let's go towards a more happy phase, which is
Hmm.
Golfraj. How did that come
Yeah.
about? Where did the idea sort of germinate, etc.?
I think how did the idea come about was during COVID, where I, after my divorce, I went into, how do I put this? There was so much chaos that the only thing I found peace in was creativity.
Mm,
And I randomly went up to a friend and said, "Is there a job?" And I worked with artists, and I went into an art field. But I mean that was a beautiful job. Finished that, and I came to Golfraj. I opened this up in the start of COVID, and it was, how Golfraj came about was because I think my love for golf just never died. I didn't have the right direction into what I wanted to do. So the first thing, and I'm a bit of a nerd sometimes like that, and
sure.
the first thing I go to is books. And I'm just like, okay, what am I supposed to do? And then I was like, let me learn how to teach golf. So I went ahead, did my courses, did certifications, studied literally with books and physics. And yeah, and then just came back and started this academy. My dad was already running the pro shop where equipment is being sold.
Sure.
So, it just fit together. I started teaching golf also about, it's been 20 years now.
Wow.
So I started teaching golf really early on, but
There's lots to talk about, but in the interest of
go
time, and
for it.
particularly not so much for you and I, but for viewers and watchers with
Yeah.
diminishing attention spans, I'm going to ask you a final, fairly loaded question.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to flatter you, I'm simply factually stating that you've already amassed a fairly diverse set of life experiences at a relatively young age. You've been a pro golfer, you've been a golf coach, you've been an artist manager, you are a psychologist, you've been married, divorced. I mean, that's a hell of a lot. Um, what I want to actually conclude with is this, and that is what we try and do with most of our guests, because we
Right.
want to be able to leave people with a certain on a certain note of hope and solution and suggestion, that in all of this rigmarole of life, uh, what have you realized to be maybe just one or two things that have held
Wow.
you in good stead, or you've developed as a consequence of your lived experience?
You know, when you're saying all this, I remembered my favorite author. Oscar Wilde said to love oneself is a beginning of lifelong romance. And it resonates with me so hard right now. I have come to a point, if I ever had to share something out loud, would be preserve your energy. Your energy is so sacred. There will be ups and downs, but I now, when I enter a relationship, any form, brother, sister, cousin, a partner, you take two steps back, you reflect. It's an honor to be with you know. And I'm not saying this from a place of arrogance.
Of
There is
course.
absolutely no arrogance in this, but I'm saying it from a place where, yes, I mean, I've now come to love myself so much that I now know the kind of love I deserve back. And it's a feeling, it's an understanding that comes with a lot of healing, and the healing is never ending, you know. So
You've selfishly completely made my day, because for those who might have studied it, and I think we all have at some point at school, studied Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid, and I've made my own little concoction, which
yeah,
is a pyramid to self-actualization,
okay,
and you've essentially spelt out the summit of that. I will, and I'm not trying to at all ruin what you said, but I'm obligated to sort of play devil's advocate, or at least caution viewers
yes,
that this is one of the hardest things to do in our country. The moment a woman decides to embrace herself, first investigate herself, find herself, and then embrace herself and take certain actions and draw certain boundaries
yeah.
that make her authentic self, i.e., self love, she will be looked upon as selfish,
Oh,
being
100%.
not doing her duties, blah 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 blah. But please, 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 um, uh, be obstinate, be neat. Let the world say whatever it says. I know, I promise it's easier said than done, but you can come find me. I'll be with you, and do it, because it's very, very important.
Enjoy that journey. Yep. Yep, enjoying that journey. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful. What a lovely chat. Thank you once again for being so open and honest. I'm certain it'll inspire a lot of people. And we wish you all the best. May you keep discovering new facets of yourself and indulging them thoroughly.
Thank you so much, Karthik. This means the world to me having this really wonderful conversation with you. Thank you.
Likewise. Take care.